I did not come into politics to enrich myself, but to serve the people of Jamaica. As leader of the opposition, I must lead by example at a time like this. I will therefore redirect the bulk of the 240+% increase in my pay and retain 20% of that increase and contribute the rest to persons in need and other worthy causes. I intend to do this until the outstanding grouses affecting the public sector workers arising out of the restructuring have been satisfactorily addressed. The principle of equity was not adhered to in the new public sector pay arrangements, and many public sector workers were left out in the cold. In this context, the massive award to the political class further offends that principle of equity. It is a principle that the People's National Party believes in and had consistently advocated for from the outset of the restructuring process.
Based on internal discussions within the parliamentary group of the party, we took a position that we would not object to an increase to parliamentarians as part of the overall compensation package. While we did not know the exact nature of the increase, it was anticipated that there would be a significant increase based on the realignment of permanent secretaries within the band. We didn't know the exact nature because no details were shared with us prior to going to Parliament on Tuesday. And also within the permanent secretary's band, where a minister earns $1 per week above a permanent secretary, within the band, it starts from a low of 17 million at the lowest end of the band to the highest end of the band being 23 million. So we would not have known where a minister would have been placed, and as such, a member of parliament is tied to the minister as a percentage. In my response to the minister, I said we took no issue with what was presented. That was a response done in real time based on what was being presented at the time. We had no prior details of what we were going to receive. On reflecting on the nature of the increases, we recognize that the increases were significantly larger than anticipated. And they're larger because the ministers have pegged themselves to $1 above the highest scale on the permanent secretary's band, which is at the 23 million. So I repeat, band 15 starts at 17 million on the lowest end, and at the highest end it's 23 million. And the minister earns $1 more than the highest band in that scale where a permanent secretary is. A permanent secretary, however, permanent secretaries would range on that band. Some may be at the second level, some may be at the third, some may be at the fourth. So there's a wide disparity within that band. And that band represents a $6 million difference between the lowest point and the highest point. So ministers were placed at $1 per week above the highest point. And as such, the other salaries, which are a percentage of ministers, would reflect that, which is why we said we found the increase that was granted higher than what we would have anticipated. I also said in Parliament that a number of the issues related to public sector workers were outstanding and needed to be resolved. And I've been very consistent on this. There are anomalies related to salaries for teachers, where there seem to be errors in the calculation made to teachers. There are also issues around what teachers who have been in the service for 20 odd years and the lack of equity with teachers who would be in the service for a year or two. There are also issues related to the removal of increments without consultation with the JCSA, the absorption of duty allowances, and issues related to traveling allowances. So there are two specific things that we are calling for. One is that there be a delay in the implementation of the increase to parliamentarians until these outstanding issues related to other public servants are resolved. The second thing we are calling for is a reconsideration of the alignment of a minister to be $1 above the highest scale in the permanent secretary's band. We are saying that that alignment should be more in the middle of the band. So right now it reflects $1 above the 23 million. It should be lower, somewhere in the middle, in the range of probably, the mid-range of probably about 19 to 20. That would obviously necessitate a downward adjustment in all the other salaries because, for example, a member of parliament earns a percentage of what a cabinet minister earns. So our position overall, our position now is that those two issues, resolve all the outstanding issues before you implement the increase to the parliamentarians, which is consistent with what the minister had said at the beginning, that the political class would await all the other groups being resolved first. And while those groups signed, they still have substantive outstanding issues that are to be resolved. And secondly, to readjust the minister from being at the highest point on the permanent secretary scale to be at the midpoint.
It has now also come to light that this level of increase will put the salaries of Jamaican elected officials way higher than our peers in the region. That is a situation which it is difficult to justify, given that we have one of the lowest rates of GDP per capita among our regional peers, and Jamaica has not managed to rise out of its chronic low economic growth pattern. This salary mechanism will need to be revisited under the next PNP government. The hollow argument about attracting people to go into politics does not resonate with me. Nowhere in the world is monetary compensation the inducement to enter politics and to give honest service to one's nation. What our country needs at this time is to attract, to motivate, and to retain persons within our teaching profession, our nursing profession, our law enforcement professions, and so on. As Julian Robinson MP has stated, the opposition is of the view that the increases in the salaries of elected officials should be suspended until the outstanding grievances affecting public sector workers are satisfactorily addressed. I am mindful that the leader of the opposition is the only parliamentarian on our side whose package is in the senior executive leadership category. And our other parliamentarians continue to have discussions among themselves as to how best to deal with their situation. I just want to say two things in addition. Firstly, I see that the private sector and the JMEA have come out supporting the early passage of the impeachment bill. I tabled that bill, I think, 2 years ago because I saw the importance of it arising out of the George Wright fiasco, where a parliamentarian beat up a woman with a stool in a public place, and that person still sits in Parliament, and in fact has been placed to sit on the opposition side, much to our disgust. Secondly, I am calling for, again, an increase in the income tax threshold. The 1.5 million was instituted in 2016. That is 7 years ago. Inflation over that period has been over 40%. It is time to adjust that upwards and give our workers a break. Times are hard, people are feeling it, we must do something more for the working class. I would also consider the development of a recall mechanism to ensure accountability for the performance of members of parliament. It is a system which exists in other jurisdictions, and I think it's appropriate that Jamaica look at it seriously at this time. It was one of the measures called for decades ago in the Carlstone report. We need to make sure that politicians maintain the trust and confidence of the people they represent.
Teach them! Hey, yo, hello! Send the message and make it reach them. It's Teach Them, right here. Warlord representing.
Thank you for watching. Like the video before you go. Please subscribe if you haven't done so. And remember to share the video with your friends and family. And browse the channel for more quality content. Until next time, walk good, my friends.
Teach them!